Before we dive into what I want to talk about today, I do want to say a huge thank you. My fiance got me a legitimate microphone, and it's pink. And he spent all day Saturday setting up a camera so I could have a proper recording space. So this is taking a little bit getting used to. I've never done anything like this before. I mean, I've tried in the past to do YouTube, but really didn't. I'm a writer. Like, that's kind of what I do by nature. So I understand how to do writing. All the audio visual stuff is completely new to me. So I've had to learn how to use OBS and set that up and figure out how to record. And so that's why the quality hasn't been very good the past couple of videos, because I'm just still figuring this stuff out. But I'm really appreciative that he got me a cool pink microphone. I love it. So hopefully that'll improve the sound quality. But without further ado, I want to call attention to this article that was published in Vice called "Mankeeping is Why Women Are Done with Dating," and it's an attempt to explain why women are opting out of the dating market. And I think honestly it's more an attempt for women to provide one another with validation for why they're failing so badly in the relationship department. Before we dive into the actual substance of the article itself, I do want to call attention to the background of the article. One thing with modern media and journalism that we don't raise enough attention about is that all of these ideas that are kind of being dispersed within the culture come from somewhere. They come from academia largely, and we don't really give enough attention to who's creating these ideas and where they're coming from. And as you'll see with this piece, a gender studies department at a university is financing research and financing young students to come up with all of these thoughts and theories about gender and our relationships with one another. And then these people go out and they create research that is then used in articles like this to distribute these ideas to culture. So these ideas aren't just coming from nowhere. They're not coming from a vacuum. And so I think it's really important to understand how ideas are being transferred from quote unquote intellectual elites to us at the peasant level. And this is important because this article opens up with researchers at Stanford have finally given a name to something many women have been dealing with for years. It's called mankeeping, and it hyperlinks an article here. So right off the bat, this writer is using an appeal to authority. That authority is Stanford University. And the assumption here that whatever Stanford has said about gender and this theory of mankeeping is correct. And I think we as educated citizens who read and dissect this content and this type of writing need to get better at critiquing the validity of where these ideas are coming from. So before we dive in, I want to introduce you to the writer. Her name is Ashley Fike. Pretty unremarkable standard content writer, does a lot of stuff on the internet. I've done content writing as well. I say unremarkable because it means it's not like she's from some prestigious publication like the New York Times or something. She's just, a content creator. But what is interesting is she studied at Portland State University. If you are not aware of Portland State University and why that is significant, let me introduce you to Peter Boghossian. This is his resignation letter that he wrote in 2021. And he had two things to complain about that I think is worth highlighting here. So the first is that Portland State University had become a academic center that was minting out ideologues. And I think maybe I graduated in 2013. And so maybe I experienced some of the ideology. I think I definitely did in terms of globalism. I studied the Middle East and wrote my senior thesis about Palestine, so I definitely with that regard. But I wasn't in the gender studies world. I didn't really touch any of that. So this was kind of news to me as over the past couple of years that this stuff has been making its way into the mainstream. I didn't know the extent to which critical theories were being taught in college, or at least I wasn't really aware of it. But Peter Boghossian he taught philosophy, was seeing that his students over the last decade or so had been unwilling to use the Socratic method and challenge their ideas and their assumptions and come to different conclusions. They were just completely closed off. And so he says here that students at Portland State are not being taught to think, rather they are being trained to mimic the moral certainty of ideologues. And again, those ideologies come from somewhere. They come from professors and academics within those institutions. But the most notable thing about Peter Boghossian that you want to know is that he was part of a group of academics who wrote a bunch of hoax papers to get them published in credentialed journals, just to show the extent of the bullshittery happening at academic institutions. So he wrote one here called The Conceptual Penis as a Social Construct, and just calling attention to how anyone can write about anything and get it published. And then because it's published in a academic journal, that appeal to authority comes into play, and people take it as fact and as certainty. And so we've created an entire discourse where we think certain things to be true just because they've been published, and whoever publishes these things, and we think them to be true, therefore they are true. And this trickles down to like the mainstream and the rest of us. So if NPR tells us that the Hunter Biden laptop story doesn't matter, well, a good portion of the population is going to think the Hunter Biden laptop story doesn't matter, when in fact it actually did matter and it was real. And so it's important that we start having a bit of skepticism towards how where authority comes from and who's claiming it, and how different people are using the appeal to authority to transmit their messaging across the general population, so across you and I. So as I noted in this original piece, Mankeeping here is hyperlinked to a gender.stanford.edu page. And so this is the article from the Clayman Institute for Gender Research, and the article title is The Structural Burdens of Men's Declining Social Networks. Again, we need to go through this process of looking at who wrote it. So this article was written last year. It was by Mariana Zhang. She was a graduate dissertation fellow. And it's about this woman here and her research, and her name is Angelica Puzio Ferreira. So Ms. Zhang is currently a postdoctoral researcher at New York University, and she is researching how children reason about social categories such as gender and race. So a completely useless and bullshit topic that means absolutely nothing. But what's interesting about this woman is she graduated, it looks like high school in 2014, and then went straight on to her undergrad, and then from there went straight on to a PhD. And her only professional experience is doing research, and she's now at NYU. So she's been to two prestigious universities and now is a postdoctoral fellow at NYU, which is also a center of wokeness. She has no real experience. When we talk about like academia being an ivory tower, this is a great example. She has absolutely no real world experience other than within academia and within the echo chamber of ideology that is being incubated within academia. And she's written all sorts of different papers here. I think this structural thinking and its consequences, a developmental approach. I think she's writing a book about like structures and so like gender constructs, basically. That's how I interpret it. But she's written a bunch of papers. And again, like I said before, if Peter Boghossian proved anything, like this is equally bullshittery, because there's no substance necessarily to this. So she's the one who wrote this piece, Mariana Zhang, and then the woman of whom this content is predicated on, her research, her name is Angelica Puzio Ferreira. Same story. She started college in 2012, went from bachelor's to master's and straight to her PhD. And again, I don't see any real world experience here. Based on when these two women graduated or started college, I think they're maybe a couple years younger than me. I'm 33, almost 34. So they're maybe late 20s, early 30s probably. So cusp Gen Z, elder Gen Z, younger millennials. So they have, I'm not saying that young people can't add value to society, but you need to have like some sort of actual experience about things. You need to go do things and try things and not just like live in a bubble and like academia and that kind of thing. And so they're talking about things that they're studying, not things that they're experiencing or observing. So Ferreira's research is about men's social network decline. Basically, her argument is that patriarchal masculinity impedes emotionally intimate bonds between men, and as a result, men have started to shift their emotional load, if you will, onto two outlets. One, the manosphere and to women. So basically her argument here is if you're not a toxic man, you are probably going to be putting more and more of a burden on women. And so the narrative that's being promoted here, again, this is in academia in a gender studies department, exactly what Peter Boghossian talked about when he resigned from Portland State University. All these narratives, right? These narratives about gender and what we're supposed to believe. So this woman has created a theory about why men are lonely. Ironic because she's a woman and she apparently knows how to talk for men because they can't talk for themselves. But she's now recast the conversation. So it's not even just that men are toxic anymore. It's that men are becoming a burden. And that's really important because it's not even at this point like we want to be independent. We want to do our own thing. It's like we don't need you. We don't want you. And you're a burden. You're actively hurting us. No one wants to be told they're a burden. Right? Like that, you know, from my own experience, like when people use that kind of language or tell you you have no value, you're worthless, you're undesirable, like that hurts. That hurts deep at the core. Man, woman, I don't care who you are. Like, no one wants to hear that. And so for a woman to be putting this out into the mainstream and telling... So this is basically, this is what's happening in academic circles. Academic circles in the gender studies departments are telling us now, telling women that men are a burden. And then you have writers like this, like Ashley Fike, who are now distributing this into the mainstream. And so this is how we're getting all of this conflict. Is because you have all of these half-baked ideas coming from ideologically captured academic institutions, and then because of the appeal to authority and the fundamental belief that if it is written in a journal, therefore it is correct, you know, women like this can publish theories that maybe there's merit to it, but again, like I would love to know what her real world experience is. I mean, it's one thing to study something, it's another thing to it's one thing to survey people. It's another thing to like observe it and witness it and participate in it. So to give you an example of what I mean by this. So I wanted to understand worker shortages. I wanted to understand why restaurants and right after COVID, right? People were talking about worker shortages and why like fast food places were struggling and why all sorts of worker shortages. So I went out and I got a job at Waffle House and I spent, you know, a couple months working at Waffle House. And my conclusion was the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. You know, so I'm not saying like I'm you know, a perfect at this, but at least my approach has always been, if I want to understand something, I'm going to go experience it. I wanted to understand the Middle East. I wanted to learn Arabic. So I found a way to move myself to the Middle East and live there and study Arabic. Like I'm a firm believer in immersing yourself. And so I take stuff like this with a grain of salt because this woman can't possibly immerse herself into the quote unquote manosphere because she's just not part of it. Like she is a woman. She is never going to understand what it's like to be a man. And men are never going to understand what it's like to be women. Like that's, you know, that's how life is, but I digress. Anyways, let's dive into this article. It was published in Vice back in June. So it talks about this mankeeping idea. And basically, mankeeping describes the emotional labor women end up doing in heterosexual relationships. It goes beyond remembering birthdays or coordinating social plans. It means being your partner's one-man support system, managing his stress, interpreting his moods, holding his hand through feelings he won't share with anyone else. All of it unpaid, unacknowledged, and often unreciprocated. So right off the bat, there's this assumption that men are just taking from women, and that's not true. Men give. Men give to... I'm sitting here with a microphone I did not acquire for myself and probably would never have acquired for myself, to be totally honest with you. I run marathons and I'm still running in sneakers that are so beat up it's unreal. You know, we complement each other. We're that's what the whole point of a relationship is. You're supposed to like complement one another. And so this idea that relationships are completely one-sided is nonsense. And she talks about here all of it unpaid, unacknowledged, and often unreciprocated. And that's absolutely not true. Men bear so much of the emotional burden of managing women and our emotions. It's not real. And again, speaking from experience, like I am like any other woman who has, you know, hormonal swings or just gets in my head or my emotional state can change on an instant. I can be in a happy-go-lucky mood, and then if someone says something wrong or I take something the wrong way, like my emotional state can change in an instant, and I'm not fun to be around. Some days I wake up and I'm great and wonderful. Other days are, not so much. Lately, I did a lot of freelance work, and my freelance work has completely dried up, right? So that's been a source of stress in my life. And depending on the day of the week, I can be go-getter. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to figure things out. Strong, independent woman. The next day, I'm like, the world is ending. I don't know how to do anything. I've completely wasted my time. This is a boondoggle. I should quit and go get a job as a server. So I oscillate every day. Every day it's a new emotion. And the fact that anyone wants to put up with that is just astounding to me. And I know I'm not the only one. You can, and I'm not even that bad, to be honest. I don't think I'm that bad. But you can watch like any sort of TikTok or YouTube video. There are tons of women who film themselves, and they happily, and just how they Jekyll and Hyde. They switch all the time. They have emotional outbursts. There was one, I think this was on Ewu, which is like a true crime thing. But this woman, I think she might have stabbed her live-in boyfriend to death, I want to say. I remember this. So they were kind of, I think they were in Miami and like super like bougie. But this woman, there was a CCTV camera footage of her and cell phone calls and audio, and she was just awful. I don't know if she's bipolar or what, but this poor man was putting up with her, and it cost him his life. So to say that there's this narrative that women are benevolent, innocent angels all the time, that's not true. That is absolutely not true. Women are abusive. Maybe not physically, but definitely emotionally. Women are abusive. Women do have toxic traits. Toxic feminism, femininity is real. Women do bad things to other people, to children. It's not just men. It's not just men. Women do really bad things too. And so when we have conversations like this and we only look at one side and we say it's completely unreciprocated, it's unacknowledged, this completely ignores all of the day-to-day trauma women put men through. Just because women have no grasp of our own emotions. So, yeah. Okay, she says the root cause of this is because of the male loneliness epidemic, and romantic partners are expected to pick up the slack. Many men offload everything onto the women they're dating, and she becomes his entire emotional infrastructure. So this is interesting to me because on the one hand, men are going their own way. Men are opting out of relationships. And I think, and was it in the beginning of this one, or it might have been in this, the actual original one, like why women are opting out of relationships. I forget where I saw it, but women are opting out of relationships, right? So you have men going their own way. You have women choosing singleness, and we're celebrating this. But then also they're talking about romantic partners are expected to pick up the slack. So what is it? Women and men are being single and going their own way and doing their own thing, or they're in a relationship and burdening their partners. Like there's a contradiction there. So either you're in a relationship or you're not. So I guess maybe the conclusion here is that a growing number who are in a relationship are offloading to their romantic partners. But again, kind of just what I was saying before, like men and women each bring different things to the table in a relationship. And it's unique. They're different things each bring. And women offload all the time. So I don't know. And the male loneliness epidemic is real. Like men are actually struggling right now, and in part because of everything I've just said. We've told men that they're burdens and society doesn't want them and women don't need them, so there's no place for them in the world anymore. And now this really further reinforces that, and their biggest fear that they're unwanted and unneeded. Like that does no good for anyone. So this author argues mankeeping is why more and more women are done with dating. Again, I think this is trying to validate why women, especially feminist women, are failing to find relationships. I've done other videos about this as well. She says that women aren't opting out of love. They're opting out of being someone's therapist with benefits. If you think that's what a relationship is all about, I'm glad these women are opting out because that's not love. That's not a relationship. If you ever think that your relationship is that transactional, Like that I'm someone's housekeeper, or that I'm the chef, I'm the personal chef because I do all the cooking. Like if you start thinking of relationships into the individual day-to-day transactions, or like, exchanges like that, you're not in a relationship. That's not a relationship that's built on love. That's not healthy at all. So to call women someone's therapist with benefits is really dehumanizing and demeaning to men, because they're so much more than that. They're not just, maybe there's men, effeminate men, who are just can't, they can't get past their emotions. I don't think men will confide in their wives because there's a relationship there and it's built on trust, but it's not a therapist relationship. So that's insane to call it that. So the Guardian calls Mankeeping a modern extension of emotional labor, one that turns a partner into a life coach. Again, that's not a relationship. And this also ignores the fact that, at least this has been my observation lately, there's been a growing number of men's groups. So men understand the loneliness problem. They understand the lack of friend groups and how important those friend groups are to their social networks and all that kind of stuff. There's a large number of men's coaches and men's groups and mentoring groups and mastermind groups and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think I've heard of at least, because I was going to a walking group for a while here in Austin, and I think there was like 4 or 5. I think at one point there was one weekend I went, like 4 or 5 guys who, you introduce yourself, and they introduce themselves as men's coaches and stuff. So maybe it's an Austin thing. I don't know. There seems to be a lot of coaches and men's support infrastructure here. So I don't know quite where they're getting at with that. Okay, what women want isn't complicated. They want shared effort, mutual support, emotional responsibility that doesn't get passed off like a group project. When that doesn't happen, they're choosing solitude over stress. No, I don't think they're choosing solitude over stress. It's that men don't want the feminist women that are on the market right now. And that is pretty much it. I think these women are involuntarily solitude. So incel, instead of an incel, or women insols, they're involuntarily in solitude, and they're trying to justify why they're in solitude, and they're trying to adapt a empowering message to make themselves feel better. But men don't want them, because men don't want this. They don't want to be someone's therapy patient. They don't want to be life coached. They don't want necessarily shared effort. They want compatible effort. They want women to show up and do the women things, and men to show up and do the men things. And we haven't created spaces for men to be able to do that. I'll give you a good example. So when you go on the dating apps, right? There's this meme that you'll always see guys holding fish, and women will critique that and they'll make fun of it. There's videos of girls going through, Bumble or whatever, and they see dude with fish and they make fun of him for that. That's what the dude does. That's what makes him happy. Your job isn't to make fun of him. It's to support him. And so to make sure that he can go out and have times with his guy friends. And my fiance, him and one of his buddies, they go hunting all the time, and I love it. It's great. Like, they get to spend time together, do their guy things. And I don't know that that's normal in a lot of relationships. It seems like that's maybe not normal, that women put down guys, or they don't want them to go socialize with their friends, their guy friends, because they're insecure about their relationship. I don't know. That seems to be my observation of society. But I think that's really important. Go do your guy things. Go have guy time. That's why guys like, playing video games and hunting or fishing, and they have their man caves. Like, they need their space. They need space to do things. And women haven't given them the space to do that. And now they're saying that they're choosing solitude over stress because they've denied men their place in the relationship, and they haven't given them the responsibility and the honor of leading that relationship. And then when women aren't getting what they want or expect, which is, from the feminist paradigm, they're choosing solitude over the quote unquote stress. Okay. So what she says here is what their women are really doing is they're protecting their capacity, being alone is easier than managing someone else's emotional life. Okay, let me tell you something. That is not true. I don't know if this woman who wrote this is Ashley Fike. We don't know what her status is, if she's in a relationship or not. Like, is she married? Does she have kids? Who knows? I don't know. So I'm not going to speak for her. But I think that's important to call attention to. Like, who is actually writing this piece? What perspective are they writing from? We talked about the ideological perspective from Portland State University and the academic one. But all of these women creating this research, right? They don't have real world experience, for one. But two, what's the relationship state? What, if they're struggling to find relationships themselves because they've adopted feminist ideology, are they just projecting onto the rest of us just because they've failed and not understood the assignment? That's an interesting question. I'll tell you from my own experience, being alone is not easier than managing someone else's emotional life. I will happily cook and clean and be emotional support when needed and take care of things and manage the household and do all the girl things that the girls are supposed to do, rather than being alone, because I've been alone. I've lived alone. It's not fun. It's not fun. Everyone, people talk about how great it is. It's really not. There's nothing more dreadful than coming home from a 9-to-5 job to an empty apartment to cook for yourself. And then you have leftovers for days because you have no one to share it with. And then you sit around and you have no one to talk to at night. So you just sit and you watch TV or whatever. In my case, I became a workaholic. All I had was to work. So I worked. I had to get up at like 5. I run, so I had to get up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock every day, go for my run, come back, get ready, go to work, go to my, sit in traffic, go to my job. It's probably, if you include the commute, it's probably like a 10 hour day, right? You come home. At the time when I lived in DC, I lived in a really small apartment, so I could barely cook. So I didn't even have a stove. Only had like a 2-burner. It was super tiny, mini fridge and everything. It was crazy. So pretend to cook, but I love to cook, and I food is my love language. So the ability to cook and share it with others is super important. And so if I'm not able to do that, that hurts me. That hurts me to my core. And so I ended up I would come home, and then I wanted to escape from my job so badly. I was trying to create all these dumb side hustles. I learned how to do like Amazon FBA and Shopify and trying to build websites, starting a blog. I was doing whatever it took to get out of my 9-to-5 job. And so I ended up just working. That's all I did. Because I bought all into the hustle culture. And so no, being alone is not easier. Like, it's depressing. It's sad. You have nothing to live for besides yourself. And that is just so narcissistic and hollow and empty and vacuous. And I wish that upon no one. So yeah, this is the new thing now, that women are becoming the emotional support jockeys for men, because apparently men are incapable of forming men groups and seeking out their own support, when in reality, kind of like I said before, I think this is an attempt by women to validate the experiences of other women, because women like this and who are trapped in the feminist zeitgeist are increasingly becoming dissatisfied with their lives. You can just look at the data, look at how people are living their lives. Women who believe this ideology are on more antidepressants than everyone else, and I think that speaks for itself. So yeah, this is an attempt to justify why women are done with dating. But the important thing to remember, and kind of what I walked through in the beginning, is how this is taking an academic idea and ideology that's being posited in academic institutions and how it's being distributed across the population. And this is what's been happening for years now. And because mankeeping is, a cool soundbite, it makes for a great headline, publications are going to run with it. And what does this do? It just further reinforces the divide. It further tells men that women think they're worthless. And it just makes it harder for everyone to, get along. And it encourages men to continue going their own way, which, I think we need to come together and solve our differences, not continue to divide them. So anyways, that's what I got for you today. If you liked this video and you got anything out of it, I would love it if you would subscribe. That would help me out immensely as I try to grow this channel. And if you have any thoughts about this, especially because I know a lot of dudes dudes watch this. So if you've experienced this, you know, what has been your experience been like in terms of this idea of emotional labor and how it's this one-sided thing that only women seem to have to carry the burden of. What has your experience been with emotional labor? And if you know a woman who maybe is starting to question feminism, definitely send this to her or check out some of the other stuff I have in my feminist playlist, because I think women are inculcated in this. They can't see beyond themselves, and I think this is part of the problem, is just women aren't exposed to other women calling out the bullshit that is feminism. And until more women start calling it out and calling attention to it, I think they're going to continue doubling down like this and trying to come up with new clever ways to validate their feelings. So thanks again. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.